seen the coppers today. I better turn Mary Wells down here. Yeah, I got a phone call from them yesterday. They told me at noon. I got a phone call a little bit before noon by a constable, and he told me an investigating team would be showing up that day, and they'd take a report from me. They'd take me down to the video room where the cameras are for the parking lot, so I can view them and maybe identify the vehicle or the perpetrator. Yeah. Anyhow, 8 hours, they never showed up. 8 o'clock, I went to bed at 8 o'clock, lying down, right? So, I'm sort of pissed off, right? I'm missing my vehicle, my transportation, and I'm homebound without it, eh? And so the next morning I get up. It's too early to call, I figure, when I'm up at 3:30, 4 o'clock, so I wait for 8 o'clock to roll around, and I call up 22 Division. The guy told me that's the crack investigative team that's going to come and see me, right? So I call up 22 Division. After, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes go from one person to another person, and I'm not even talking to a copper, right? I finally get a desk sergeant down at 22 Division, and I tell him, I says, where the hell are the guys? I'm pissed off. I use the word pissed off. I says, where the hell are the guys that were supposed to show up yesterday? I waited 8 hours for them. I canceled the fishing trip this morning, which I did, which was today. I was supposed to go with a bunch of guys this morning. They were going to pick me up knowing I didn't have no transportation. But, I canceled it early, about 4:30 a.m. We're up early, us fishermen. And so I'm whining to this copper, right? And he says to me, well, I'll send somebody over immediately. I explained everything to him. These cops didn't show up and all of that. And he says, I just put everybody on parade and send them out, and I'll call up one of the men and I'll send them over. Oh, okay. So I'm waiting, an hour and a half, still no copper. Hour 45 minutes, still no copper. I'm getting phone calls from my fishing buddies wondering, what happened with the coppers, right? And I keep hanging, hey, I'm waiting for the cops, and I hang up on them, right? And then all of a sudden there's a knock on my door, a loud knock, and I know that's a copper knock. Have you ever had cops knock on your door? They don't, Dave. And then they kick the door in the old days. But anyhow, so I answer it. There's a cop there, and one of the building's people, right? Some guy who works for him, right? And so I say, you're here for, because you're investigating the theft of yeah. So I take him down, I show him where the scooter was in the parking lot. And then he says to me, now I said to him, well, now let's go have a look at the video of the night before. And he says, well, I've already done that. And I says, you've done that? You were supposed to come with me. I was supposed to go with you to have a look to see if I can identify anything. And he says, well, I looked at everything and there was nothing. And I tried to call you 3 times. And then he looked at his phone and he pushed a button and he says, see, your phone's not ringing now. And I take my phone and I look and phone calls, recent phone calls, and there's 3 private calls. I don't take private calls. So I says to the copper, what do you mean? I says, your phone's on private. I don't take private calls, neither does many other people. How the hell can we identify you as the police if you call? He says, well, I don't want anybody to know my phone number. And I don't want to argue with the cop, right? So anyhow, he explains to me that there was no cameras for that section of the parking lot. You know, wonderful, right? And there's been no reports of any of my bikes. He actually had a picture of my bike. I'll show you a picture of it right now. So he had a picture of my bike, and he said there's been nothing like that in here. And he says, do you have the serial number? And I says, well, I haven't found it yet, but I keep everything in it someplace, and I will find it. He says, we need the serial number to identify it. And I said, well, I don't need a serial number. It's got damage to it from a squirrel that chewed a hole in the plastic so that he could get to some peanuts I had in the bike for some chipmunks. The guy just looks at me, and I don't want to go there with him, right? So, and I says the hole was about that big, like that, right? And no other monster bike in the world's going to have that same hole in that same spot chewed out by a rodent. And he just says, well, yeah, and I says. He says, but how are we going to be able to identify it? And I says, well, do you have a warehouse that has stolen scooters in them and stuff? He says, well, yeah. I says, well, then I can go down and have a look. And he just looks at me like I'm fucking crazy or something, right? And I says, I'll be able to identify the bike just by looking at it, no problem. And other things that I know, I know about the bike, I'd be able to pick it out, no problem. And he says, well, if he says no bikes have been reported stolen in the last little while, and if they if no bikes have been caught that have been stolen, we haven't caught any in the last week, he says. But they're stealing 20 a night in Toronto, but they ain't caught one bike in a week, right? One guy that had a stolen bike. But anyhow, he told me that he'll call me if he gets if a monster comes in, that's been stolen, right? But I says to him, well, what's the chances of that? And he just said, well, negligible, I think. That's what he said, negligible. And yeah, absolutely right. It's gone. The little guy's gone. Anyhow, that's the update on the scooter. It's gone. God damn it, thieves. Oh, another thing, right? The guy says, if you see the scooter, you let us know and we'll come and arrest the person who's on it. It's driving by, I'm on foot, right? And I just looked at him and I said, if I see the scooter, I'll be tackling the person and I won't need to call you. They'd be calling an ambulance for this prick. Anyhow, later.